Thank you,
President
President Trump. Do you
Bukele.
plan to ask President
Low
Bukele
rating.
to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly
Which one is it?
deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our country.
There's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, you know, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it.
The US now, and Donald Trump has praised El Salvador's president in a meeting between the two leaders in the White House. Nayib Bukele dubs himself the coolest dictator in the world after cracking down on crime gangs and transforming his country.
At an airport in El Salvador, the latest group to be deported from America. 11 men, gang members, says the White House, but detained and removed to this mega prison with no evidence of their crimes, no judicial process, and no access to lawyers. They join hundreds already lifted from America and sent to El Salvador's notorious terrorism confinement center, one of the largest jails in the world. At a White House in step with this policy, a guard of honor for the president of El Salvador, the first Latin American leader to visit President Trump. Nayib Bukele styles himself as the coolest dictator in the world. Donald Trump likes him because there is a symbiosis to this relationship.
I want to thank you for the great job you're doing. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Bukele has an 80% approval rating in El Salvador. He's turned a soaring crime rate on its head, the world's most dangerous country to the Western Hemisphere's safest.
Sometimes they say that we imprisoned thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions. So, you know, like...
It's very good. Who gave him that line? Do you think I can use that?
The images, the rhetoric has pitted Donald Trump against his own courts. But he is doubling down and has ambitions to go further, to outsource American prisoners, American citizens, to El Salvador too.
I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country.
Among those already deported is Kilmar Albrego Garcia, removed to the El Salvador jail because of an administrative error. But the Trump administration says they don't have the legal obligation to bring him back.
Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country?
On immigration, President Trump can point to material successes since he took office. His hard line and his partnership with El Salvador has pushed crossings on the southern border for the year so far to their lowest level in decades. A meeting of minds then, two men who admire each other's methods, who share controversial tactics, who relish in causing a stir. There is advantage for both leaders in this relationship. El Salvador is getting paid for this outsourcing. President Trump gets results on immigration, but at what cost for the principles of due process in America?
China is that the ships that are filled with Chinese products don't know where to go. They're stuck in port. The factories that are making the Chinese goods are going to have to slow down because they don't have ships to load the stuff into. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on China to stop its bad acting and to come to the table.
What's the hardest part of doing injection molding? It's when we get all these brand new molds in, but the orders are gone. Once the 145% tariff hit, our orders basically disappeared. This batch of goods still had some hope when the tariff was at 54%. The customer said we could keep going, but when it suddenly jumped to 104%, they told us to stop everything. The new molds had just arrived, were loaded onto the machines, and within a day they were taken off. This round of tariffs has had a huge impact. The day it rose to 104% was terrifying. Our entire industrial zone here usually stays lit until 9 PM. But that night, by 6 PM, all the lights were off. Everyone had gone home. We normally run more than 30 machines, but now we can only keep half of them running. The rest have all been shut down. It's been really tough.
This TikToker is the owner of an injection molding factory in Ningbo, Zhejiang province. What he said reflects the painful reality many Chinese manufacturers are now facing. Ever since the U.S. raised tariffs to 145%, all of his orders from American customers have been cancelled. Many other TikTokers are posting similar videos, saying that because of the tariffs, U.S. orders disappeared overnight. Now the people with no work and no income are China's frontline factory workers. One TikToker working at a shoe factory in Jiangsu said a small factory producing shoes has shut down because of the U.S.-China tariff war. The video shows empty workshops, piles of unsold goods, and once busy assembly lines that have now fallen silent. On April 11th, China announced it would impose a 125% tariff on U.S. goods in retaliation for the U.S.'s 145% tariff. The Chinese authorities stated clearly that this is the highest rate they will go, and that U.S. products no longer have any market in China. If the U.S. raises tariffs further, China says it will not follow. This marks the end of the first phase of the tariff war that began on April 2nd under President Trump. At a press conference in Beijing on April 14th, Liu Daliang, spokesperson for China's General Administration of Customs, admitted that China's exports are facing serious external challenges. But he insisted that the sky won't fall. In response, China analyst Yue Shan said that the authorities have already admitted that things are bad. Whether the sky has fallen or not should be judged by the industry, and the industry has long said that it has already collapsed. The tariff war has swept across the country, catching countless businesses off guard. One foreign trade TikToker wrote, "The sky has collapsed. All my U.S. orders have been cancelled. The economy was already in bad shape. Now it's even worse. I don't even know what to do. Should I switch to the domestic market? I've never done live stream sales. I have no idea how to even start selling." Another TikToker simply said, "The U.S. orders are gone. It's heartbreaking." The TikToker's post sparked a heated discussion online. One person commented, "The U.S. is the world's biggest market. There's no second one that can replace it." Another user complained, "We already finished preparing 2 containers of goods this month, but the customers suddenly canceled everything." Someone working at a company said, "We've got goods floating at sea, but once they arrive in the U.S., they'll be hit with nearly $5 million in tariffs, so we've stopped all shipments. It's hopeless." One person even said their goods were already loaded onto containers, but the customer is now asking for a return. Some users pointed out that switching to the domestic market won't help either. They said it's a completely different game for people who have always done foreign trade. They said, in recent years, domestic consumption has continued to shrink. Selling locally is just too hard. One TikToker from Zhejiang decided to go all in. He said, "With the U.S. tariffs skyrocketing, there's no way to keep doing foreign trade. I've got about 20 million yuan worth of goods in the warehouse, and today I'm clearing everything out at 10% of the original price." According to the South China Morning Post, an employee at a listed Chinese company revealed that because of the new U.S. tariffs, their shipments to the U.S. have dropped sharply, from 40 to 50 containers a day down to just 3 or 6. The company has also suspended shipments from the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia. All factory orders have come to a halt. Sources say some customers decided to abandon their goods even though they're already on the ocean. Senior leaders from Chinese companies have returned home to deal with a wave of cancelled orders. Many goods that haven't been shipped will now be scrapped. Staff have been told to pause all container operations until a stable alternative market is found. China's textile industry is also at a breaking point. Keqiao district in Shaoxing, Zhejiang, China's largest textile hub, has 3.5 billion meters of fabric piled up in warehouses. People in the industry describe a no-win situation. Running the machines burns cash, stopping production means waiting for collapse, and even trying to sell means losing money. One TikToker posted a video saying the tariff war has already reached their factory. They make children's products for export to the U.S., but everything has come to a standstill. Workers are stuck at home with nothing to do but wait. Another TikToker said the trade war has dried up factory orders. Workers are getting less than 5 hours of work a day and are struggling to get by. Some business owners are even using their own money to support employees just to keep things going. A TikToker who works at Yuxing Footwear in Dongguan shared,
刚刚收到美国客人 暂停订单的邮件。
I just got an email from a US client saying they are putting all orders on hold. That means the factory will have nothing to do. A friend at another shoe factory called me this morning. He said they just finished planning out 3 months of orders last month. But today they got notice from the customer to stop everything. Products that haven't shipped yet are being delayed. Orders that haven't gone into production are all paused. The factory has over 300 employees who can't just be sent home, and their salaries add up to nearly 3 million yuan each month. If they are sent on leave, how are they supposed to survive? We already bought all the raw materials. We still have to pay our suppliers. And the rent for our nearly 10,000 square meter space is almost 200,000 yuan a month. We can't skip any of it. The worst part is, the customer can't even say how long this pause will last.
In the comments, someone from Guangdong added, "We supply leather to a company called Baokai in Huizhou. They just told us to stop delivering materials. This is bad." In another video, a worker talks to a colleague named Wu. "Hey, Wu, is this the batch for the ice trays?" "Yeah, they're ready." "Then don't ship them. The customer just told us to stop everything." "But I already called the truck. It's on its way." "I can't help it. The customer just got back to me and said don't ship." This clip shows a foreign trade factory in Guangdong that makes silicone ice trays. Just a few hours before shipping, the customer suddenly called and told them to stop everything. The full batch of 20,000 pieces was ready, the truck was booked, and the goods were already packed, but everything had to stop. The likely reason is the panic in the market caused by uncertainty around tariffs. A TikToker in Ningbo posted on April 12th showing workers sitting around, waiting for transport to go back to their hometowns. The TikToker said, "U.S. tariffs have surged, foreign trade orders have been cancelled, production is on hold, and workers have been sent home. It's really hard to find work this year." Another TikToker in Shenzhen, who works in financial consulting for local businesses, said that factories in Shenzhen can't hold on much longer.
You might not believe it, but many factories in Shenzhen are already collapsing one after another. Rent is already high, there's overcapacity, and there haven't been many foreign orders. Now with Trump's tariff moves, the competition is fierce, and the price wars are brutal. Profit margins are razor thin. Many factories have already relocated to Southeast Asia. The ones left in Shenzhen are mostly run by people born in the 70s and 80s. Do you really think Shenzhen's factories have a future?
One TikToker who works in foreign trade said that things are going to get harder for everyone in China, especially for people in this industry. She said, "Things will only get tougher for all of us from now on, especially those of us in foreign trade. On the surface, tariffs might seem like they've paused for now, but in reality, the pressure on businesses hasn't eased at all, and there are still many uncertainties ahead. The people shouting patriotic slogans online and ranting all day aren't the ones working in foreign trade. Only those of us in the industry know how desperate things are for companies focused on the U.S. market, so please stay sharp and prepare for anything." The TikToker went on to highlight 3 harsh realities. First, a wave of factory closures is spreading, and China's domestic overcapacity has reached its limit. Even though the yuan has weakened and seems more competitive on the surface, in reality, the cost of everyday essentials like food and oil has gone up. Consumers are only willing to spend on basic needs now. Making a living is getting harder. In this environment, it's critical not to invest blindly or try to expand. The key to survival is protecting your cash flow. Second, inventory pressure is massive. One company is stuck with 121 square meters of unsold goods, weighing them down like a mountain. She said, "Don't count on the domestic market to absorb all of this. For foreign trade businesses, overseas orders are like oxygen." Third, people must hold the line on professionalism. If you're not a wolf-like salesperson out chasing orders, then you need to quietly protect the job you have. Getting swept up in hype or panic will only turn you into cannon fodder in this economic storm. She summed it up like this. Bottom line, remember these 3 things. Hold on to your clients, hold on to your cash, and grab every order you can. If you believe the experts who keep painting rosy pictures, you'll be the first to fall before the sun comes up. She believes the most dangerous part of the tariff war is the chain reaction it sets off. In another video, she says, "You think tariffs are protecting local businesses? Wrong. This is like hurting your enemy, but also wounding yourself. It's not just about limiting exports. What's really happening is a complete rewrite of the rules of global trade." She compared the U.S. market to the Grand Canal in China, vital and massive. Other markets are like small streams. Replacing the U.S. is nearly impossible. She warned that once tariffs go up, the logistics costs for exports rise too. This creates a ripple effect that many businesses can't survive. Experienced traders who went through the 2008 financial crisis have already planned ahead, like setting up production lines in Mexico. For business people, the most important thing is to stay clear-headed, understand the situation, and respect economic rules. Blind optimism or following the crowd is dangerous. The real threat isn't the obvious one, it's the unseen domino effect. Another TikToker pointed out that the city most affected by the tariffs may be Dongguan.
The biggest loser in the tariff war could be the so-called world's factory. There are around 14,000 mid-sized and large companies in Dongguan, and 60% of them rely on exports. Orders have plunged and it's getting harder to survive. I recently checked in with an old client from a Taiwan-owned business. They used to take just 1 day off for the Qingming festival. This year, they took 5. The worst part is these big factories now have to turn to the domestic market to survive. That means competing with small local factories and vendors. The whole industry has become even more cutthroat. And yes, I support the government's countermeasures. But when I see people online shouting, "We'll pay any price," I just want to say, stop yelling. You might be that price.
One more TikToker added that wages have dropped across the foreign trade sector, and layoffs are happening often. Even though this trade war looks like a political fight between countries, in the end, it's ordinary people who are paying the price. The TikToker described how life has drastically changed for foreign trade workers. In the past, you can earn 8,000 yuan a month at a foreign trade company. Now they cut it down to 3,000. If you don't like it, you're told to leave, because they really don't need that many people anymore. Company performance keeps dropping, and when people earn less or lose their jobs, of course they'll spend less. Consumption was already declining, and now it's dropping even more. Once spending shrinks, let's be honest, every industry gets hit. Nothing is untouched. The impact of the tariff war has gone beyond factory floors. It's now seeping into every part of daily life. A real estate TikToker in Dongguan shared,
This is crazy. A lot of people are now saying the tariff war is pushing property values down. But think about it, the economy is in terrible shape. Prices are rising so fast. When I go grocery shopping, I don't even look at prices anymore. I just grab what I need. But when it's time to pay, my heart sinks. I have to be extra careful with every yuan I spend. Many foreign trade companies are on the edge, and a lot of businesses are about to go under. That directly affects ordinary people like us. Everyone is constantly worried about losing their jobs. People are tightening their belts. I used to go out to eat with friends on weekends. Now we just cook at home to save money.
He added that people who want to buy a home are under enormous pressure. High mortgage payments are a huge burden. If you lose your job, you can't pay. And even if you have a job, living expenses are so high that salaries barely cover the bills. After paying the mortgage, there's almost nothing left. No money for gatherings, no new clothes. Life becomes extremely tight. Unemployment is becoming overwhelming. One TikToker said,
完蛋了，完蛋了。老百姓的日子是越来越苦了。
It's over. Life is getting harder and harder for regular people. The US has basically blocked everything. China's exports have no way forward. 99% of foreign trade companies will be wiped out, and the workers who depend on them are losing their jobs too. People in China have already emptied their future earnings just to buy a home. Some still have decades of mortgage payments ahead. Now they're all facing unemployment. After years of living a certain way, if you suddenly lose your job and have no income, how do you maintain your lifestyle? A lot of people won't be able to handle it. This is a very serious situation.
So where's the crisis heading? Another TikToker offered a sobering analysis.
这次贸易战引发的危机其实早就已经显现出来了。
This crisis started showing signs long ago. Now most foreign trade factories have already shut down. Employees are either on leave or have been laid off. Most production has stopped. Workers have gone home and they're not getting any severance. A huge number of workers who used to make foreign trade products are now out of work. No salary, no income. What happens next? There's already a huge number of unemployed people. If we try to shift all those foreign trade workers into domestic production jobs, it won't work. Domestic factories already run 2 shifts a day, sometimes even 16 hours. They don't need more people. The only way to absorb them is to reduce work hours and split the jobs. That means some people will earn less so others can have something to live on. But if some people earn nothing at all, survival becomes a problem. That's when scary things can start happening. He gave an example. One day, he saw 2 people arguing in the street. Their electric bikes had collided. One shouted, "You're making me late for work." The other replied, "I don't even have a job anymore. I've got time to argue with you." Conflicts like that, he warned, may become more and more common. Ms. Huang, who works in foreign trade, told overseas media that China's unemployment rate was already very high, widely estimated at over 30% or even 40%. Now, with the high tariffs, a massive wave of layoffs is expected in the foreign trade sector. She explained that people working in foreign trade generally have stronger technical skills and expertise than those in domestic sales. If they lose their jobs and flood into the domestic job market, it could lead to brutal and chaotic competition. Ms. Huang also believes that the U.S., through this tariff war, has cut off the Chinese Communist Party's last remaining lifeline. She said foreign trade has been China's only source of real revenue. In the past, China's economy relied on three key drivers: foreign investment, the real estate sector, and exports. But now that even foreign trade is collapsing, China's economy is on the verge of complete failure. She warned that things could regress not just to the 1990s, but even further back, to the poverty of the Mao era. She added, "In our line of work, there's a saying, we're just waiting for the Communist Party to fall. We really support Trump. What he's doing is incredibly smart. The goal is to bring down the CCP. Yes, it's painful for us in the foreign trade, but this is the only way to end the problem. In the end, the Communist Party will collapse, and only then can China become a normal society. That's when the U.S. might finally ease up."
The streets are without traffic, and chilling silence emanates throughout the area. These are the scenes of China's ghost cities. These streets resemble abandoned or evacuated cities from a zombie or nuclear apocalypse movie. But nobody even lived here in the first place. China's economic plan to build into oblivion has transformed it into the world's second biggest economy in a short space of time. But do these empty cities show the ugly side of this economic boom? Let's take a look. Number 1, Ordos. The whole city feels like a post-apocalyptic space station straight out of a science fiction movie. The words of photographer Raphael Olivier when speaking about the Chinese ghost city Ordos in northern China. In the early 2000s, China experienced a coal mining boom and was awash with cash. Expecting a huge economic boom, they built an entire new city named Ordos, which was anticipated to be the home of 1 million people. 10 years later, hardly anyone had moved over. Ordos New Town was very close to Ordos Old Town, which was already a thriving town. There was no need to make this place their home, and who wants to live in a ghost town? Most of the people who settled in Ordos Old Town were migrant workers and government officials, and government offices were moved near Ordos in order to encourage them to live in this empty place. The whole city is one big investment plan gone wrong. 80 to 90% of the apartments in this city are owned by investors who have held on to them and are hoping to make money off them in the long term. They are also investors who are so wealthy that they do not need to budge and lower the price. By 2016, China decided to lower its expectations in hopes that Ordos would be home to just 300,000 people. But a combination of high taxes and poor construction meant that still nobody wanted to live there. By 2016, only 100,000 people lived there, so even their lowered expectation of housing only 300,000 people were clearly not low enough. And this is a nationwide problem. In China, there are 65 million empty units, which is enough to house the entire population of France. These empty units could even home at least 25% of its homeless population of 300 million. The reason why there are so many homes is that China's middle class views property as a safe investment. They are not allowed to invest outside of China, so having more than one home is a safe way of keeping your life savings intact and invested in brick and mortar. China's real estate sector is also a huge part of its economy. The country wants to continue growing its economy, so it also needs to continue growing its real estate sector. And the only way to continue growing its real estate sector is to continue building and building. In the center of Ordos are 2 horse statues, representing the traveling nomadic culture of its region. It turns out they want to travel anywhere but here. Number 2, Junming's Ghost Neighborhood. Sometimes the phrase ghost cities doesn't always apply to what's happening in these areas. What often happens is that there are ghost neighborhoods within a city. Junming is a city with a population size equivalent to Madrid, but there are certain neighborhoods where there are little or no people to be seen. Not much has happened in Sunshine City in Junming. In fact, the most exciting thing that happened inside the city was in 2021 when 15 skyscrapers were demolished, having stood unfinished for several years. Construction was started in 2011, but the developer ran into debt and building simply halted in 2013. Also in Junming is Evergrande Spender City, which is a group of buildings meant to house 60,000 people. Although official media outlets claimed that 30,000 people lived there, all of the shops and stores were closed, as well as its kindergarten and hospital. And Evergrande is the name of one of China's biggest property developers who have currently racked up mountains of debt. The developer owes $300 billion of debt, which is more than the GDP of Portugal. They have just continued building and the debts have continued piling up. Number 3. Tianducheng, China's Paris. One of the most peculiar ghost cities is Tianducheng. The idea of living inside a city inspired by Paris in China seems like a great idea. The only problem is they were not only inspired by China, they simply replicated it. If you saunter through Tianducheng, you will find Parisian facades and lovely cobblestone streets. Without any hint of subtlety, they have also literally recreated the Arc de Triomphe, Champs-Élysées, and the Eiffel Tower. This has been known as duplitecture, where you make exact replicas of historical landmarks. To some people, this looks quite tacky, but to others, it's a way of visiting Paris without traveling too far. The town's original plans were to have 10,000 residents. In 2021, they had 10% of this figure. Most of the people are curious visitors from nearby Shanghai, so why is it a ghost city? Tianducheng is so committed to replicating Paris that the cost of property in this area is also incredibly expensive, and not many people can afford to live there. And of course, Paris is something you can't just replicate. Number 4. Yuzhipu, China's Manhattan. Yuzhipu was China's attempt to replicate Manhattan. A promo video for Yuzhipu leads with a mocking description of major American cities. What an incredible skyline! Thank goodness it's missing the tons of homeless people, drug addicts, graffiti, trash, street gangs, and ragtag street vendors. And the video is technically correct. There are no homeless people, gangs, or drug addicts. The only problem is that there is not much else there either. There is no rush hour traffic of people going to and coming from work. The streets are not littered with crowds, and the buildings are the only thing that resembles modern-day Manhattan. Visiting in May 2021, Bloomberg reported, quote, "A weekday visit in May found empty streets, long unfinished office buildings, and a shopping mall and IMAX cinema that both seemed permanently shut. The situation was better when Bloomberg reporters visited its completely deserted streets in 2015, but not dramatically so." End quote. Number 5. Thamestown, Shanghai's London. And we see a continuing theme here, where China's attempt to replicate London has also been abandoned. Welcome to Thamestown. While Tianducheng tried to replicate Paris, Thamestown has borrowed bits and pieces from merry old England. There are the iconic red telephone boxes, fish and chip shops, English pubs, and walkways which resemble Victorian and Edwardian England. But when you walk through the town, it's not exactly Piccadilly Circus. Most of the streets are empty and a lot of the shops have closed down. The small town was designed for students and university workers, but none of them could afford to live there. And none of the property owners are willing to lower their price. So Thamestown remains like the scenes in the zombie movie 28 Days Later. Number 6. Chenggang. There are ghost cities, but there are also recovering ghost cities. Chenggang was a ghost town that managed to escape its post-apocalyptic setting. In 2003, Chenggang was transformed from natural farmland and rolling mountains, but by 2013, the place had built a city nobody wanted to live in. But today, Chenggang is only a ghost city during the winter break, as the city has transformed into a living space for students. A cluster of 7 colleges are now situated in the area, a move which has bred new life into the area. The city is by no means full or anywhere near as dense as a big city, but bit by bit the place is gradually transforming. There are night markets, street vendors, and young people socializing on the weekends. International stores such as H&M and Zara have even set up shop in this city too. Number 7. Pudong. Our last example will give China space for optimism, and we will take a look at what was deemed China's first ever ghost city. Pudong is just outside Shanghai and was destined to become a brand new financial district. This city was built in the 1990s and was sneered at by critics all across the world. In 1998, during the Asian financial crisis, this city's skyscrapers had a vacancy rate of 70% and construction was halted in some sites. The famous economist Milton Friedman described the city as, quote, a status monument for a dead pharaoh on the level of the pyramids, end quote. And for a number of years, their critics were right. In 2013, 60 Minutes did a report on this city which read, quote, we discovered that the most populated country on earth is building houses, districts, and cities with no one in them. We found what they call a ghost city of new towners with no residents, desolate condos, and vacant subdivisions uninhabited for miles and miles and miles. They're building cities. Giant cities are being built with people not coming to live here, end quote. But behind the scenes, China were desperate to transform this city's fortune. By 2005, the Shanghai government made government-owned banks relocate to this city, and international businesses were given perks for setting up here too. It was a slow and steady period of growth, but today the place is much different. In 2022, Pudong's annual GDP topped $400 billion and is a world away from its ghost city status. In fact, its occupancy rate is actually higher than Midtown Manhattan. So it will be interesting to viewers watching this video in 10 years' time to see what ghost cities are left in China. We'll be happy to stand corrected if any of these ghost cities ever change. But until then, China's ghost cities and neighborhoods remain an uncomfortable consequence of the country's monumental growth. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, you can help us out by liking the video and subscribing to our channel.